Let's see. Let me ask AJ this. When I say wide receiver university, what is the first school that pops up in your head?
So this might be a little more recency bias, but for me, I think like even when you just ask the question, I think initially it's got to be LSU. Because for me, you get guys like Odell Beckham, you got Jamar Chase, you got Justin Jefferson, Jarvis Landry is another guy.
Thomas.
I mean, yeah, there you go, Brian Thomas, and he was the second fiddle to who? Trying to think of name. No, last year he was the main guy. Yeah, I'm thinking of when Chase was there, and Jefferson, they were played together. So because Chase graduated, I think a year after he did.
Yep.
And so I mean, just thinking those two guys that are. I mean, shit, they might be the best two wide receivers in the NFL right now. Yeah. So for him to be a wide receiver 2 at the time, I guess that just goes to show what kind of great team that was at the time. But for me, I think LSU's wide receiver university when I think of them, at least recently.
That's a good argument. I think when you think of wide receiver U, I think 3 schools come up to mind. Obviously LSU, and then I think of Ohio State, and I think of USC. Brian, do any of those schools fit your criteria? Or
yeah, I was gonna say Ohio State, and it's a little bit of recency bias, a little bit of not. Obviously, now you have the bright star. He's starting to figure it out. Marvin Harrison Jr. But you go back, not putting a whole lot of production up this year. Chris Olave also went there. You're also talking about somebody that can maybe start figuring out with his quarterback. They didn't look good last week, but Garrett Wilson also went to Ohio State.
Shit.
And there's a lot more, to be honest with you.
Michael Thomas.
Michael Thomas went there, and I was trying to look at him, and I'm not gonna lie to you, a lot of guys I had no idea who they were there, but they were ranked in like the top 10 Ohio State wide receivers of all time.
Oh, but that's just longevity of playing there.
I didn't know who David Boston was. And he was 2.
He got drafted by the Chargers.
Yeah, but I'm sure you played all 4 years and stuff like that. So.
Well, yeah,
which you don't see a lot of now.
Exactly.
And I will say that maybe a little slept on here, although this might be more like a quantity over quality thing. Alabama has a lot of good wide receivers.
There's definitely.
Heisman Trophy winner, Devontae Smith.
A lot of people argue and do say that Amari Cooper is one of the top route runners in the NFL. He runs routes really well. So I think, I can't rattle off a bunch of wide receivers from Alabama, but I do think that they could, kind of sneak in there. It's for me at least, being someone that just started watching, really getting into college football a lot more recently. I don't really have the knowledge to know more than just a few years ago.
Yeah, and I mean, you talk about recency bias. Look at Ryan Williams, the 17-year-old catching game winners against Georgia, the biggest game of the year probably.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, it just shows that how good of recruiting Alabama has.
With no Nick Saban.
Yeah, I was gonna say with and without him.
For me, obviously, I'm gonna go with USC. When I think of wide receivers, I think of USC. And they've all, for the most part, produced in the NFL. I look at, you want to go with more recent guys. Jordan Addison, former Biletnikoff winner. He, to be fair, he went with Pitt, but he did transfer to USC and had a really good season with Caleb there. But then you have guys like Marquise Lee, Robert Woods, Keyshawn Johnson back in the day.
Drake London.
Like Amon-Ra. Like, when you think of like a couple teams in the NFL have USC wide receivers as wide receiver 1s. Obviously, when you look at the levels, right, you have Drake London and then there's Justin Jefferson, right?
Yeah.
So obviously the eliteness level is not there. But when I think of like college wide receivers who always produce, USC wide receivers produce. Especially this year, look at Jacoby Lane. Just transferred in this year. He has 300 yards, 3 touchdowns. And he shows to be Miller Moss's, number 1 target. So he's producing really well. I think all these schools have arguments, but I'm going to go with a little bias and go with USC.
By the way, just a little bit of poll here. And I promise I didn't look this up. I think Santonio Holmes also went to Ohio State.
Yeah, I think so.
Champion.
Yeah.
I was thinking of Nelson Aguilar too.
Yeah, I go. I've heard me saying it, but I literally leaned. I was like,
Yeah.
come on,
The Ravens legend. Nelson Aguilar.
That's a call. That's a callback from the guest.
Right here. This table. Oh,